Welcome to the Femsplainers. I'm Danielle Crittenden, and somebody just popped into my studio up the top to have what? A cocktail, just a cocktail up the top of the show. And that would be my beloved co-splainer, Caitlin Flanagan.
Hello, headsplainer. It is Caitlin. You are always leading me down the garden path of very early drinks because I'm 3 hours behind you, but I can never deny you anything. And all your ideas are always so good. So here we are.
Yep. I know it's only still early afternoon there, but I do have a Japanese whiskey as we do this. So you gotta catch up. I think day drinking is fine in a pandemic.
Oh, I think you reach a certain age and it's fine at any time because bedtime is like 6 p.m. So you might as well get started by lunch.
Well, what is especially great about you being here up the top is my guest this week is author and journalist Nicole Laporte. And she's just written this book called Guilty Admissions, The Bribes, Favors, and Phonies Behind the College Admission Scandals. And you are quoted in the first chapter because you had this previous life, which I always forget you have because I always think of you as this amazing writer for The Atlantic and author, of course. And then you worked as a guidance counselor and a teacher at one of the fanciest schools in all of LA. And it figured into this whole college admission scandal. And then on top of that, you just dropped another bomb in The Atlantic, I see.
Bird in the punch bowl. Okay, I didn't know where you were going with that.
Another bomb. That was a bomb, which is titled, Private Schools Have Become Truly Obscene. Elite Schools Breed Entitlement, Entrench Equality, and then pretend to be engines of social change. So as we record this in March, where all these parents and kids are chewing down their nails, waiting for their to see which college they've gotten into, I think this is just perfect timing to have you on and to tell us about this article. It's pretty brutal on the parents at private schools.
It is brutal on the whole system. You know, I'm not talking about all private schools. I'm not talking about religious schools, and I'm not saying everybody has to send their children to public school. I can acknowledge many reasons that I did not want my children educated by the state, and I did send them to private school, but that's my cat meowing. So lonely cat woman is speaking to you. But the thing is, the schools at the very, very top of that system, the famous ones, the boarding schools like Exeter and Choate, the Manhattan schools like Dalton and Spence and Brearley, and then nothing comes close to my former employer, Harvard Westlake, out here in Los Angeles. These schools are sitting on mountains and mountains of cash, and they are untaxed dollars that they sit on top of. They don't let more students in. They don't grow the grade, so to speak. All they can do with it is just build fancier and fancier and fancier facilities and more and more and more haute bourgeois courses, molecular gastronomy is very common in these schools, and you name it, you can.
What is it? Is that just a word for fancy food like California high-end cuisine?
No. It's molecular gastronomy is where you put a little, I've been to Harvard Westlake parties and had this kind of food. You get liquid nitrogen or liquid whatever that is, and you put in a small bite of something, and then all you do is smell the foam that comes out. It really is an absurd sort of eat the rich kind of cuisine. And I guess it has sort of a practical application because it's, all cooking is science to an extent. But these programs have gotten richer and richer and richer. And this tiny band of schools, about 50, maybe 100 schools, have an outsized effect on everything in American life. They account for 25% of all Ivy League admissions, which is a shocking number. They really control access to the elite colleges for Black kids, especially low-income Black kids. They have an extraordinarily large power and effect on the rest of us. and in ways that we don't acknowledge. And, the outsized number of Rhodes scholarships that go to private school graduates is a pretty shocking thing. The number of academic awards at prestigious colleges that go to kids from private schools. It's a whole continuum of privilege, which, on the one hand, maybe they should spread some of the wealth around by giving us some, I always think instead of Exeter having a $1.3 billion endowment to graduate fewer than 300 kids a year, I think, instead of that, what about if they every year peeled off, half of what they earn on that money and give it to the closest public school, just so it's not so obscene that you would have to go to a school in New Hampshire, a public school that might be quite underfunded, and drive by this palace of rich kids. So there's all those issues. But the other issue is vastly accelerated after the murder of George Floyd. These schools got very rightly attacked by generations of Black alumni and then current students who made online campaigns talking about the very real suffering that an awful lot of Black students have had at these schools over the generations, which hasn't been addressed. And instead,
at the private schools, not the public.
Private schools,
yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Public schools bad enough.
Yeah, but it's bad everywhere. But this is a particular kind of suffering. And instead of systematically going through the complaints and figuring out real solutions to each of these problems that are very real problems these young people and people my age we're talking about online, they've introduced the very loose term is critical race theory, which usually whenever anybody uses that term, they're just a conservative saying that they don't like the fact that education is changing. Critical race theory is a very valid way of looking at American history. We can look at history in so many ways, the history of ideas, the history of science, the history of racial oppression. But they've introduced it as a way of telling the world, oh, we're very wonderful. We are engines of social change and social progress and inclusivity and equity. And it's all bullshit because 5 out of 6 kids that apply can't even get in. So you're not inclusive, you're exclusive. And if you really have these Marxist beliefs, there's no Marxist private schools. It's a complete travesty that they should try to get us and the public to get off their backs by thinking, oh, these rich people are so special. They really care about equity and inclusion. So I looked at all those issues, and people are a little hot under the collar at some of these schools right now.
Well, it's an awful problem. And as I got into a little bit of the culture with Nicole, but, as you say, we have a local elementary school, public school, which is just magical. And it was run, and it's always up to the principal, the principal and what they can manage to do at these schools. And so my younger children went there. But then when they got to high school, we have a high school. I didn't want to send my kids to this high school for many, many, many reasons. And so we got into the whole private school thing, which is financially backbreaking. But it's also, you're paying this tuition. And then they've got these massive endowments.
Right.
And yet every year they're dinging you for more and more money, which you point out. I think some of these schools have waterfalls and climbing walls and lavish gyms and libraries and you're sort of thinking what more do they need? And it's not going. They will sort of put the mask on that, oh, this will allow us to bring in more underprivileged kids, which you think is great. But only, I think, as you point out, only a small fraction goes to that. And then you're really handpicking your candidates. And is that who you say then the colleges say, oh, that's the underprivileged kid we want, not the kid from PS 16 or wherever in a rough area of LA. We want the one who went to Harvard Westlake.
Right. And that's really a problem because it's just saying that the funnel is smaller and smaller and smaller. So for maybe a Black kid from a low income family to go to Princeton now they have to somehow get themselves into a private school at 7th grade for Princeton to take them seriously, because Princeton doesn't want to put the time and the effort into really looking at kids from across the public school spectrum. It's time consuming, it's labor intensive. They just think, oh, they went to the private school, they can handle it here. But in many ways, that's not true. In many ways, they're bringing them into a program that, I'll give you an example. At Harvard West, like in all of these schools, the elite colleges go in and they all take the top Black kids, which we think is great. But those kids will often have said, what I'm going to college for is to become a doctor. That a lot of them are first generation college. And in America, first generation college people, and my own Flanagan family, very much, part of this, they want to be doctors. That's kind of the first professional step that people often make. Now, Princeton's looking at that student's record, and they know that that kid is not going to survive in the STEM curricula the way it's composed at Princeton. And so we, America, are sending them these incredible kids that should be generation following generation of Black doctors, and they are stepping down over and over again into the humanities, which is really a problem. Why are they losing all these Black kids? Well, you could say in a very cold-blooded way, well, they want Black kids to increase diversity, but the science program is not tailor-made for a kid who maybe didn't have exposure to these kind of classes. So it's a really, it's a game that a lot of liberals are in charge of, that in many ways is stacked against Black kids, even though it includes a lot of money for Black kids to attend.
Right. And we, as we just said, we were both able to opt out of even at backbreaking expense. These kids don't have that opt out. And it's a way, the public, it's not just liberals and wealthy people. I mean, you have to blame the public school system that is just broken. And broken.
I really agree with you. The public schools, if they're in a very wealthy neighborhood, the typical suburban neighborhood, they're probably pretty good. But I always say, take me to any city or town in the country, show me where the poor kids live, and I will always show you the worst schools in that city. That we put the very worst kids, the very worst schools in the very poorest neighborhoods. If people say, oh, I know I'm going to go to private school, then those people are looked as though, well, you've abandoned the public school. No, the public schools abandoned us. Nobody with a choice would send their kids to the schools that I can almost see from my window, the public schools. People are trying to get at least to a charter school, at least to a gifted, at least to a magnet program. So, and I'm not a person who is like, blame the teachers union first. The teachers union has done a lot of good things. People don't want to acknowledge that often, but they have. But in this respect, and particularly in this past year, the teachers union is almost operating against kids. They are, keeping schools closed that could be open. They are instituted new racial policies that are meant to elevate the Black kids and are going to fall so heavily and so disproportionately on the Black students. And I think that we have these private schools at the top, they're just the very top of a whole continuum of the fact that we don't have a decent, coordinated education system available to every kid in the country. We just don't have it. And people say we need to pay more money. We don't. It's not nothing that we pay. We
Right.
pay enough that we should be able to have a good program for every child in America, but we really don't.
Right. I volunteered for a little bit. One of the teachers at this elementary public school I mentioned that was great. She went and taught in a very inner city DC school, and we had a Labrador who was really great with kids. He was enormously fat and cuddly and docile, and she would ask me to bring him, and so the kids would get excited, and he'd be there for story time and things. And it was heart-wrenching that these kids and these were like, I think 5th graders or so. They were young. And, you saw them getting dropped off. One little kid I saw getting dropped off was like by a drug dealer, that in this car that just kind of threw him out.
Of course. Yeah.
But it was so difficult. This teacher was amazing, like Mary Poppins style teacher, just so devoted to these kids. And they had a new principal and he was devoted to the kids and they couldn't take it. Like it just wears you down and down, the sadness, the parents, the families that these kids are coming from or the lack of families. And the kids are great, but it's just an environment built to fail. And the teachers who really want to help get so discouraged.
So discouraged. I have a young niece who, went to private schools and private colleges. And from the time she was a child, she said, I'm going to teach in public school in Harlem. She's a New York girl. And she, she sent herself to Bank Street School of Education, very expensive, on her own dime with loans, et cetera. And within 3 years, it was just impossible for her to stay. She creating these wonderful units for the kids on immigration, on all sorts of subjects. The kids were really excited. And it was the time of No Child Left Behind. And the principal would come in and say, put everything away. You have to go through this test material.
Right.
And there are teachers all over the country bringing creativity, bringing knowledge of kids, bringing pedagogy that they've studied carefully. And for all kinds of systemic reasons, they can't bring those to kids, which is why private schools succeed. You don't have to answer to the state. If a teacher has an innovative lesson plan or sequence of lessons, then she's usually allowed to use them if they're effective. So it's a very troubling landscape, and it adds to this feeling among the young, which isn't wrong, that just the pie is getting smaller and smaller and smaller in America. And it's harder and harder and harder to move your way up.
Well, and as we've discovered as Nicole describes it, and of course you do as well, that as wealth expands, it's the wealthy are now, as wealth gets ridiculous, they're getting into their own competitive spots with each other, that these schools are doing offering incredible educations, like multiple AP programs and stuff, whatever one thinks of the parents. Rock climbing and, in addition, and whatever, polo.
Right.
But
stables for your polo pony.
Stables where you just park your pony here. But they are also facing their own, that even if 25% of these kids still get into the Ivies, it's 25% of a bigger and bigger pool, not least globally. And now you've got like the Russians and the Chinese and people from all over the world competing, and India. So it's a fascinating problem, but I don't know, Caitlin, you're suggesting we storm the barricades of these private schools, or shake loose some of their billions from their endowments?
I don't know if we can do any of that. And I certainly, as I say, I absolutely would not have wanted my kids educated by the state. I would have homeschooled them and then shortly thereafter killed them, probably the first year, if I hadn't.
I think you would have killed yourself first. Maybe?
Somebody would have been, it would not have lasted. And every time at work, I'll have a meeting with a young parent and I'll see their really little kids at home and think, how are they doing this year of the pandemic? But I think these schools should tell the truth. Everything in America, what if people just told the truth? What if people at these schools said, we are rich, and the way the system has always been set up is if you're rich and you send your kid to a rich kid's school, they automatically go to an Ivy League school. And we're really disappointed that that's changed and that only 25% go. And so we're going to spend a lot of money to increase our kids' chances. Just tell us the truth. It's unpalatable, but it's not more unpalatable than you pretending that you are, Dorothy Day elevating the wretched of the earth to have a decent settlement house meal. You're just lying to us. You're lying to yourself. And you're just kind of giving kids this glaze of, doctrinaire positions to cover up the obscenity of their own family wealth. So I think there's
Do you think there isn't? Do you think we've lost that idea? And certainly the tales, the one that you told that Nicole quotes you telling these terrifying parents coming in and sort of throwing you against the wall and saying, "Why didn't my kid get into Yale?"
Yeah. Which now at Sidwell, they basically did just 2 years ago.
Right.
Thank God I got out when I did, because I'm such a cantankerous person. Even in my youth, I would have been killed there. Thank God I'm on quarantine.
Well, but do you think, I mean, I guess what you're saying is you think, okay, you start pushing the woke doctrines as a way of pretending that you care, I guess. Is that what you're saying? And it's hypocritical.
Well, they're luxury beliefs.
They're luxury beliefs.
Luxurious. If you're really rich, you can believe any goddamn thing you want because you've got the money already, you know?
But do you think we've lost that upper class, that sense of giving back? You know, it's almost like the Queen, like that. I mean, that
noblesse oblige, or
noblesse oblige. I mean, as unpalatable as that may be, at least it had this sense that there should be some self-sacrifice and acknowledgement of the advantages you have. And because you have those advantages, you should help others.
I think part of the advantage acknowledgement is by allowing the kids to be given a curriculum that hates America and that hates capitalism and that hates individual expression. And that if you have a child who, when you have all that money, you got to get that moral stink off of you because it's too much money. So you become very worried about capitalism. You sign something with Charlie Munger or whoever it is that you're going to give away all the money after you die. You do these things, but you still seem to be living in that extreme sense of luxury. And before we talk about the super rich, the bread and butter of these schools aren't the super rich. The bread and butter are the two career couple where they're surgeons, or it's a lawyer and a surgeon, or it's someone in corporate America. And they kind of ascribe all their wealth, all of their success to a great education. And they see the eye of the needle getting smaller and smaller for the next generation. And they think the one thing I can do to give the kid an edge, which is quite true, is to give him or her a great education. So there's this anxiety that's no longer a class-based anxiety the way it was 25 years ago when I worked in it. Yes, they want the sticker on the car, sure. But they also know that if you go to Harvard, you have a much better chance of getting into Yale Law School. And if you get into Yale Law School, you can get a job at Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher. And then you can be nice and miserable just like your parents are. You know, these aren't necessarily the happiest people on earth.
Right.
But I think it's just very visible to us. There are so many things rich people do that we can't even relate to. Whenever I've met someone who's been on a private plane and they just tell me that, oh, yeah, I went to Paris. And then they tell me, like, you don't even have to have a flight time. It's not like you better get to the airport by 3 because the flight's when you show up,
the plane will wait.
That's exactly. It just grinds my gears. So that whole world's kind of invisible to us.
Right.
But schooling, we all went to school. And if we have kids, we're all sending our kids to school. And whenever you get into something that someone else's child can have something that my child can't have, and it's an important thing, it really breeds in us. It must be almost an evolutionary idea of resources for my child. It's a very rightly bitter and embittering feeling.
Yeah, well, Caitlin, I never took you for a Bolshevik, but starting to think you might be.
Tendencies. My father was a socialist. What can I say? But I sent my kids, all my writing money is in my 2 kids right now because I sent them to these schools.
Well, it's been so delightful to have you up the top, and take care. Well, I hope.
It sounds sexual. You had me up the top. Okay. I won't question it.
Oh, your mind, Caitlin.
Your mind.
Oh my God.
Catholic school girl.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining. And after that, I'm going to have another drink, I think.
Good.
Oh, man. Okay. So again, our guest coming up is Nicole Laporte. She has written just a splendid, authoritative inside the college admission scandals. Again, the book is called Guilty Admissions, Bribes, Favors, and Phonies Behind the College Admission Scandal. And she will be on right after this first message from one of our sponsors. One of the worst skin problems is trying to deal with acne. As those who suffer with it know, there's no hiding it. It can undermine your self-confidence and even make you depressed. And while prescription acne treatment really works, it's hard to get. You have to take time off work to see a doctor and then sit in a line at the pharmacy for your medications. Well, Apostrophe is here to help. Apostrophe makes it easy to see a board-certified dermatologist online. You'll get treated immediately, and your medications are delivered to your home. Simply fill out Apostrophe's online questionnaire about your skin concerns and medical history, then just snap a few selfies, and your dermatologist will get back to you with a customized treatment plan tailored just for you. And the best part is that Apostrophe offers topical and oral medications, so you can treat your acne from the inside out and the outside in. But Apostrophe isn't only about acne, and that's why I love their products. They help me with my skincare goals, such as reducing redness, wrinkles, and even dark spots. It's also really nice to know I can have a real dermatologist, and that my plan was made especially for me. So now you can get $15 off your first visit with a board-certified dermatologist at apostrophe.com/femsplainers and use our code FEMSPLAINERS. This code is only available to our listeners. To get started, just go to apostrophe.com/femsplainers and click Begin Visit, and then use the code FEMSPLAINERS at sign up, and you'll get $15 off your dermatology visit. That's apostrophe.com/femsplainers. And use that code FEMSPLAINERS to get your dermatology visit for $15 off. And we thank Apostrophe for sponsoring this podcast. Nicole, welcome to the Femsplainers.
Hi, Danielle. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, your book is very much in the news, and I believe Netflix is now also coming out with some sort of series.
Yeah. The guy who did the Fire documentary, or one of them, has a documentary. I actually watched it last night. I had a screener. It's coming out, I think, next week. And so, yeah, it's kind of surreal to sit there. I mean, I basically know the indictment by heart because I read it about 1,000 times just to get it all clear. I mean, there's so many people involved. So it was interesting to see it reenacted, and they've got Matthew Modine as Rick Singer. And so, yeah, it's very interesting to kind of see it dramatized.
Well, I'd love for you to take us through it in the way that you did very much in the book, where you open with just a kind of interior view of these elite private schools that were the mark of, or would become the mark of somebody like Rick Singer. But talk about the culture that just produced these scandals of parents and inside the schools themselves.
Yeah, the first chapter of the book is really, I thought of it as like a scene setter, and sort of, you basically like to understand this scandal and to have it, to have it seem not quite as outrageous as it actually is, but to sort of understand where it came from and the context behind it. I just thought you really have to understand the context of these private high schools where I think basically all of the families involved in the scandal, their kids attended. And I live in Los Angeles, and I think it's a little more extreme in LA just because it's LA, and also I live here. So sort of for a lot of reasons, I decided to focus my research and my gaze, I guess, on these LA private schools, and also several of the parents involved in the scandal are in LA, and the kids went to these schools. And I think, the opening scene maybe is the best way to get into it, where Harvard Westlake, which is, considered the most rigorous, the most prestigious private high school in Los Angeles, they invited, and everyone's there to win, and the kids are grinding it out, hours of AP classes, and they're all, the parents are gunning for Harvard. But the school, I guess to its credit, tries to calm things down a little. So they have Frank Bruni come and speak. And he wrote a book, of course, called
He's the New York Times writer.
Yes. He's an op-ed columnist there. And he wrote a book called Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. And I may be butchering that title, but it's basically about, it doesn't matter where you go to college, you can. Condoleezza Rice did not go to an Ivy League school, and all these successful people do just fine in life. And so I talked to a parent who had been at this presentation, and I just remember the parent saying, we're all listening to this, thinking to ourselves, we pay 40 grand a year, our kids are working their butts off, and the last thing we want to hear right now is that Washington U is a great place. It's Harvard, maybe Princeton. And so that's the first scene in the book. And I just think that kind of gets you into this mindset. And so there's kind of the obvious competitiveness and status obsession that a lot of these parents have. It's not all of them, but it's a lot of them. It's definitely the culture. But the other thing that I thought was interesting, the more I talked to parents, is that, there's so much fear, and that, despite these families who have so many resources and can hire tutors and send their kids to, character building camps in Costa Rica over the summer, and maybe have inns at Stanford and UPenn or wherever, that even they are frustrated and pulling their hair out, and I would say even terrified by what college admissions has become, and the fact that Stanford's acceptance rate is like 5% right now, and that even when you have all of these things, it is no longer a given that your kid is going to get into that elite school. So I just felt that like this combination of the competitiveness, the obsession with certain schools, the fear, the frustration, and all the money being thrown around was just such a fascinating sort of combination that I think really laid the groundwork for this scandal. And so I kind of wanted to lay all that out.
Right. And let's talk a little bit about that change in admissions, or the changes that have come over the past few years. On one hand, you've got, as you say, you've got these incredibly affluent schools all across the country, but in like New York, Washington, D.C. and LA, you've got this unbelievable number now of wealthy people, levels of wealth that, I don't know, we maybe not even saw 10, 15 years ago. And they're all competing for the same slots, and then having money, or just being an elite, or just being famous, or just being a good athlete is now no longer enough to guarantee you any kind of admission into anywhere. I think one of the quotes I loved was one of the students who was at this school in LA, and she said, Stanford doesn't need another white girl who rides equestrian. Okay. Like as you say, they're stressing out. They're doing all these AP classes. They're doing 9,000, extracurriculars, and still they're totally panicking. So talk about now the admission process for this.
Yeah. The reason it's basically an issue of scarcity, right? There are, it's kind of the combination of certain schools over the years, dating back to, I think when US News and World Report started publishing its rankings in the mid 80s, that's kind of where it began, right? Where we have this codified list of what were the quote unquote prestige schools. So suddenly everyone wanted to go to the top 20 and just kind of ignored the rest, or maybe it was top 30, 50, whatever, but it really put an emphasis on it ranked the schools. And so that kind of set things in motion. But then you had, just over the past 10 years, the rise of the Common App, which made applying to college so easy. When I applied to college in the early 90s, I was literally on a typewriter. It was kind of a pain in the ass. And it cost, right? Like you had to mail, as you say, you had to fill out individual forms on a typewriter, and it cost every application to send to a school. So it wasn't, you chose wisely, I guess. Yeah. And the thinking back then was, I remember this, it was sort of like, 3 safety schools, maybe not even, maybe 2 safety schools, 2 reaches, but maybe you applied to 7 at the most. Maybe you just applied to 4. But with the rise of the Common App, where suddenly you can literally just hit send, and, the same application is going to dozens of schools with maybe a few different essays you have to write. I mean, kids now, I mean, many I spoke to apply to up to 30 schools. So part of it's just mathematics. It's like there are more kids applying to a finite number of schools that has just increased demand. So, I mean, and then the other thing that's happened more recently, and I mean, even since I wrote the book, or just since, I mean, I handed the book in like 8 months ago, but with the rise of BLM and a focus on diversity, which has been going on and rightfully so at these colleges over the past few years, and a real emphasis on recruiting, or not recruiting, but just admitting first-gen students. I mean, that's really gone into overdrive just in the last year, and, which is driving the white privilege class crazy, because now they feel like, there's even more of a disadvantage. I mean, really what they feel is this kind of sense of reverse discrimination.
Right.
And I think it's particularly acute at these schools where there are so many kids working so hard, taking so many, it's a given that you take 6 APs. It's a given that you do 10,000 extracurriculars, so what happens is, a lot of the parents would say, whatever the school is, Yale or Georgetown, whatever, they're looking at, 12 kids from Harvard Westlake or whatever the private school is. And, it's like those kids are competing against each other. Right. In other words, Georgetown's only going to take X number from Harvard Westlake, or so the parents believe. And because there are so many hardworking, qualified, and very bright kids, it's actually hurting them. So there's also all this, there are some parents, I hear stories of gaming the system by sending your kid to public school.
Right. No, that was my daughter just went off, was supposed to go off to college this past year. Yeah, for sure. The private schools are saying, we should maybe pull our kids in the 10th grade, and maybe that will help, because as you say, at that level, there is only going to be 2 or 3 kids going to Harvard from any given private school. But you're also it's not just a rise in American wealth, you have global wealth now too. And so you're also competing against some of the best students from China and India and really all over the world, because they're trying to buy their kids an American education as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the thing about international students is they pay full freight. So they're very valuable to colleges, and so, yes, I mean, that's definitely, colleges, I think, reserve a certain amount of spaces for those kids because they know they're paying full tuition. Going back, though, to your other question about just what had changed, the other big piece of it, I think, that's changed over the last many years, but definitely since I applied, was like, it used to be, the holy grail was to be a well-rounded student. So, you were captain of the tennis team and you did pretty well on the SATs. You maybe didn't nail it, but you did pretty well. You volunteer, you took a few APs, and that would get you into one of these schools. And that is no longer the case. And colleges really changed their focus to creating what they call a well-rounded class, as opposed to a well-rounded student. So the colleges are looking for this well-rounded class, which means that the students themselves have to be what they call pointy. So they want, not just the best cello player in the state, but perhaps in the country. And not just a kid who is interested in robotics and started a club at their high school, but who then, took it to the inner city and started it there and took it internationally or whatever. It's like, they're really looking for these kids who are quite extraordinary. And, it's terrifying for the parents. And I think it's a little bit unfair to the kids. To expect that a 16-year-old is, they even use the word branded, and that's kind of what's
what is your brand?
Yeah, you need to have a brand when you're 15 or 16. And that's just, that's sort of outrageous. So all of these things.
Yeah. And the colleges, as you say, are complicit. Like I sat through so many, admissions talks, when you do the college tour with your kid, and you realize in retrospect, it was like the Soviet Union or something. They were just lying to you all the time. Like they were saying, oh no, it's not about scores. It's not about, exactly what you just said. So we let someone in and they cite some absolutely absurd essays that some kid wrote. And they said, we just thought he was quirky and great. So we let him in. And you're like, No, that is not true at all. They are lying to you.
Well, they use, the term holistic admissions.
Yes.
Which is all the rage now. And what that is it's a just total veil. I mean, it's just camouflage. I mean, what does that mean? And I went to, I write about it in this book, but I went to one of those presentations that Stanford gave up, a little bit outside of LA, at a public high school that's a very good public high school. And, I just listened to them talk about, it's who you are and the whole person and holistic this and that. And there was no mention of 5% admittance rate.
Right.
No mention of SAT scores. The only statistics they threw out were like, how much money they spend on their fellows and research, and all these fabulous numbers, but they don't, it is so vague. And I kind of looked around the room at one point and just thought, every kid in here thinks that Stanford wants them.
Yeah.
And I am sure that maybe they want 3, so it is. And I did talk to someone, a guidance counselor, he spoke off the record, but he had worked as an admissions officer at colleges. And he said, I was outright lying at those presentations because, I literally, and he was at a very large private university, but he said when he was doing it, he had a paper on his desk that basically said, if the SAT score isn't above 1200, this student does not pass go. Like, just put it in the other, you're done. Mm-hmm. But then he would go out to these presentations and he said someone would inevitably raise their hand and say, is there any minimal SAT score? And he would just have to say, oh, no, not at all. So it is, I think that the marketing going on is so just egregious and
right. And in the end, they do need the full paying students, as you say. So the sort of joke on these parents is, in the end, the scores matter, and as you say, the branding matters. But they are going to need these kids from wealthy families and these elites coming in to keep funding their lavish programs. With businesses moving many of their operations off-site and having to make tough decisions about their employees, why not consider using Bambee for your HR and save money? Because when running a business, HR issues can kill you. Wrongful termination suits, minimum wage requirements, labor regulations, and HR manager salaries aren't cheap, an average of $70,000 a year. Bambee, spelled Bambee, was created specifically for small business. You can get a dedicated HR manager, craft HR policy, and maintain your compliance, all for just $99 a month. With Bambee, you can change HR from your biggest liability to your biggest strength. Your dedicated HR manager is available by phone, email, or real-time chat. From onboarding to terminations, they customize your policy to fit your business and help you manage your employees day to day, all for $99 a month. Month to month, no hidden fees. You can cancel at any time. You didn't start your business because you wanted to spend time on HR compliance. Let Bambee help and get your free HR audit today. So go to Bambee.com/fem right now to schedule your free HR audit. That's Bambee.com/fem, spelled BAM to the BEE.com/fem. Into this hothouse, fraught atmosphere walks the Music Man. I just thought your descriptions of Rick Singer were like, he is the most classic American con man. And actually a very hardworking, impressive con man, if we can say that. So tell us about Rick Singer, where he came from, and how he did this.
Yeah, he is the most unusual and odd anti-hero I could have dreamt up. And actually, when you see the Netflix series, they do a very good job of capturing a lot of this. But he is an oddball. He grew up outside of Chicago in a suburb called Lincolnwood. And he was kind of a misfit growing up. He was a little chubby. His family did not have money. And I talked to a lot of people who knew him when he was growing up, and that was an issue. He definitely had a chip on his shoulder. So it kind of, when you look back, it sort of helps explain things, that he had a lot of resentment toward the kids who could, go off to summer camp or have these lavish bat mitzvahs. But he was very, very mediocre. He never stood out as a student. He loved athletics, loved basketball, played baseball, but was not very good at it. He's not very tall. I've actually seen him. He's sort of a short guy.
You said wiry, like he's an intense.
Yeah, he's like, well, what happened? Where you see the sort of, I don't know if you call it the brilliance but the magic of him, or how the sort of secret sauce he has, is that he is so driven. And so at a very young age, he was tired of being the chubby kid. And he told his friend, I'm going to lose weight. And he literally would put on these, put like garbage bags on and start running and living on a diet of peanuts and raisins. And he became a slim guy. And he also, with basketball, was very obsessed with it. And everyone I talked to said he would just practice nonstop. So he had the ability to will himself to be something more than he naturally was. And so he ended up playing college basketball in Texas at a couple of these schools. Again, not a very good student and shortest guy on the team by far. But so he sort of came into it through athletics. He then went on to be a high school basketball coach in Sacramento. And the other thing about him is he's very bombastic, and he swears and he yells and he has a temper. And so he'd be screaming at kids on the court. He was fired from a couple jobs. And then he went on to work at Sac State as like an assistant coach, got fired. And at that point, so this is like the early 90s. And at that point, through working at Sac State and working on in college athletics, he started to learn the athletic admissions process. And he started traveling to schools and understanding what they were looking for in their recruits and basically how it all worked. And so that piece of information was very important as he then segued into being an independent college counselor in Sacramento. And, I will say he was a pioneer at the time. There really wasn't such a thing as an independent college counselor. Everyone, or, if your parents have the resources, you hire one. But, so he would literally coach kids, and help them with their essays and help them select schools. And again, it started out with helping athletes. So kids who played a sport, and he would kind of help them navigate what school to apply to, how to get a scholarship. But then it broadened into just any kid applying to college. So that's where it all started. He had a mom and pop business. I think he was charging like $1,200 a kid. Now independent counselors can make up to $30,000 a year on one client. So that's where it all started. And then it just, as he went on and the business grew and he started to see, the demand for this, as he started working with wealthier clients, he then expanded into Los Angeles, Southern California, Newport Beach area, and the Bay Area. And that's when it started to really go off the rails. But all along, I will say he was a slippery character. He was always someone who exaggerated. He was always someone that, you never knew whether what he was saying was actually true or not. He was making promises even in the early days, I can get you into this school. And so, he wasn't someone who went, to the dark, it wasn't a 180 maneuver, going to the dark side. It kind of gradually happened, but he is this very, he's very ordinary in a lot of ways, which I found surprising.
Well, I think that's that unexpected quality to him that would make somebody trust him. As you say, he was a genuine kind of pioneer in this. And it seems like his first or early clients were quite legit. I remember, there was the Princeton Review. You could just buy the books if you didn't want to pay for the course. And I think then there was Kaplan. But he started to, having worked, even if getting fired from these schools, especially their athletic departments, he started to see the developing system and the need for certain strengths and certain courses. And so he did seem very good at that. Although, as you also point out, he just lied and lied and lied and lied about himself, even at the earliest phases. He would say he was head coach for UCLA or something, and this was, I guess it wasn't fully Googleable at that time. So he made lavish claims about who.
Yes. And it's true. And so there are still, newspaper articles that you go back and look, and you're right. And I even interviewed some of the reporters at these, smaller papers who talked to him, and, they would just kind of take his word that I forget what he said now, because I think he said he went to Duke, or he was a reader for, he read applications at Berkeley. He later would say he got his PhD at Berkeley. He said he had worked with Magic Johnson at his basketball camps. He said, it was just, he's an incessant name dropper. And I think that also is how he sort of gained traction with the wealthier set. I don't know why they believed him, but he would just kind of walk in and start dropping these names, and it just gave him this sort of legitimacy, even though it was total, all fabrication.
Well, he had that, as you point out, he was sort of known as the one. This is the guy you need to talk to get your kid in. So he learned, I guess, from his early explosive behavior when he would, those stories of yelling at kids. And some kids, it was like out of the movies. This is the tough coach who's going to help us win the championship, But a lot of it was he was just being a jerk, and he learned to temper himself, I guess, over time. But he also, I guess, he had that no nonsense that would be appealing to these potential clients. Like I'm always very wary of someone who name drops, and I'm sure others are as well. But on the other hand, if he comes in and he tells you, even if it's untrue, these are the kids I've gotten into these schools, this is what you need to do. Look, I know the system. And he's got this kind of personality that makes you think, oh, maybe he really knows. And then he becomes this confidence man playing on these wealthy families and their insecurities about their child's prospects.
Yeah, I think what was so tempting about him was that he brought this matter of factness to this realm that is so, you independent counselors don't make promises because they know they can't. Mm-hmm. Even if you think the student, even if you're as certain as you can be, they're going to get into Yale, you don't really know, you can't say that. And I think in general, both the guidance counselors or the college counselors at the schools and the independent college counselors who are out there, they make a point early on to say, I cannot guarantee. I can do everything I can. I can make your student the most appealing applicant, possible. I can advise, but I cannot guarantee. One of the counselors here in LA that I interviewed, she said, that's in my contract. She said, my contract has 4 lines. It's very short, but one of the lines is I make no promises. And so into that atmosphere, you have Rick Singer, who that's the first thing out of his mouth. Oh, you want to go to Harvard? I can get you in. I got this, right. And I think to some parents, that was just such a relief and so unusual. They didn't really question it. They went for it. And, some of the transcripts are interesting. Like I think it's Gordon Kaplan who, and this has been written, repeated endlessly, but, he said something like, I just want this done. I just want to get this done. And I think when you get into this, this level of wealth and these people that were CEOs and venture capitalists and all this, they're used to things just being taken care of. And this became yet one more thing that someone was going to handle and take care of it, and they would get the result they wanted. And that was it. That's all they cared about. So yeah, I think he, just that matter of factness was so unusual and certainly brazen. But, I think that's, in the end, he was a seller and they were a buyer, and that's what they wanted to hear.
Right. Let's talk about, you mentioned, sometimes $30,000 a year from one client. You had a wonderful quote. This was you actually. It says, if they're going to spend $5,000 on a handbag, what is $5,000, $10,000 to hire a college counselor? So how much money is there for these counselors potentially?
Yeah, it all depends, obviously, but yeah, in LA, I have, someone I interviewed, and I don't think this is the tip of the iceberg, but they said, yeah, it's pretty standard, $30,000 a year. I'm going to pay for, to help my kid get in, and that's over the course of a few years. So they usually start working with them. I would say, into sophomore year, and then it gets very, they sort of meet more frequently and more regularly junior and senior year. I mean, some counselors start meeting, the first meeting with the families in 8th grade, and they're already just laying out coursework. Maybe they're only meeting with them twice a year at that point, but they're advising them on what classes to take. I mean, they can start very early, but I would say 30 grand a year in wealthy pockets around here is not uncommon. And one guy I interviewed up in the Bay Area who works with like international clients, I mean, he said there are cases where he gets $1 million.
Wow.
And that was when the student is at a boarding school, the family's in China or wherever they are, the kid's at a boarding school, and he's sort of the local supervisor. But it can be absolutely outrageous. I mean,
and but then Rick, he does this. He's a real hustler, as you describe, and he persuades these parents to give him a lot of money, but he's still basically coaching them. At what phase does he start to get very, very dishonest and opens up? I mean, his brilliance, I think, was preying on the lesser athletic departments of schools like especially USC, that he saw the weakness in the links, as it were, and began to exploit those.
Yeah, no, I mean, those niche sports are absolutely the biggest loophole in athletic admissions. And the reason is, no one's really paying attention to them. So no one's, questioning the coach, and no one's, they're not giving them the scrutiny of, say, the basketball team or the football team's roster, because they're much less concerned with whether the sailing team wins the national championship. But despite that lack of scrutiny or less scrutiny, the coaches still have all of these slots. So they have, beyond scholarships, they have what they're called, what's known as a walk-on slot. And that's exactly what Rick Singer exploited. And that is, the kid is not going to be receiving any money. So it's not a scholarship. A coach generally isn't going to give up a scholarship slot. So it's almost like these freebies. And, a walk-on might be, it's okay athlete, might get some playing time, but, it's a slot that the coach doesn't necessarily mind giving up. And, well, most coaches would not, I should say. These coaches did. But
it's tempting. It's tempting. And I could see it going on even without Rick Singer. We have this very wealthy family. The kid is, done some crew. It'd be nice if you could use one of your walk-on slots for this kid. But
yeah, well, I mean, walk-ons, yes, you're right. Forget Rick Singer. Walk-on slots are often used for fundraising.
Yes.
And I talked to a lot of coaches for the book, and someone told me that blatantly, that sure, yeah, exactly. Like, kid's okay, but the parents, have made it clear they want to support the program. We all know what that means. It's clear that they have the resources, and then why not let the kid on? And in sports like crew, because of Title IX, especially, like a women's crew team can have up to, I think, 37 or 47 slots. So it's just, they have this kind of abundance of spaces. Right. But yeah, and I mean, the other thing I get into in the book is just that I wasn't aware of, but a lot of these coaches, particularly of the smaller sports, they are responsible for fundraising for their own team. And like Gordy Ernst at Georgetown, that team, just doesn't receive a lot of funding from the school. And so it was up to him to, in some cases, raise money for equipment. And that was also the case of John Vandermoor at Stanford and the sailing team. I mean, he was using Rick Singer's money to buy plane tickets so the kids could, compete on the East Coast, and boats they needed to buy. So, I mean, that part to me was a little shocking that, you have a school like Stanford with whatever its endowment is. I mean, they've now gotten rid of the sailing team, but that the coach, it's very much on the coach's shoulders to come up with these funds that in some cases are for very basic items.
Well, yeah, I was just going to bring up Gordy Ernst because just as Rick Singer could pick his marks amongst the parents, so he found these coaches like Gordy Ernst. And I was shocked when I read this in your book that he's at Georgetown here in DC. He got paid, his salary was something like $70,000.
Less, I think it was 60. Yeah.
It's $60,000 a year. And as you say, and they gave no money for the tennis facilities. And at one point, they even closed down. They renovated the building where their already not so great tennis courts were to rebuild it. So for a while, the team was even without tennis courts. But that, and then he looks around at the other coaches, like who are doing football or whatever, and they're getting paid $200,000 a year in salary. So he finds that person who is a little neglected, feeling underpaid, underserved, and Rick walks in and changes their life.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And Gordy Ernst was the best example of that. And he worked with Rick the longest. And and I mean, I have to, obviously these coaches have questionable ethics to begin with. Not every coach whose team isn't getting funded is working with Rick Singer. But he definitely he kind of zeroed in on these coaches who, like you say, felt underappreciated. And I actually went to Georgetown and I remember vividly, I used to work out. It's called Gates. I don't know, you're in DC.
Yeah, maybe. My son actually played tennis there, not for Georgetown, but he took lessons there on the weekend. So I remember that building. Yeah.
But yeah, Yates, I mean, it's gone now. I think they built a new one, but it was like this kind of crappy, old, been there since the 60s. Workout space, and the tennis courts are sort of, they're in the middle, and then there's this track that runs around the courts. And, the Georgetown tennis team, when Gordy was there, this was before they built the new facility, like literally the opposing team would come to play Georgetown and they'd have to like pull the plastic curtains around the court so that the people running around the track were like, on the courts, and there's like basketball lines on the court. Like, it's just a mess. I mean, you just can't believe that. This
is what Rick does. So he finds like Gordy Ernst, and explain how it worked in terms of the parents getting money to Gordy Ernst to use one of his walk-on slots for their kid.
Well, it evolved. I think in the first case, this is back in like 2011 or something. This was before Rick kind of sort of, I guess, made his plan more official, or sort of polished it all up. But the beginning, the first parent, I think was Doug Hodge, wrote a check to Gordy directly. But later what would happen, and this is kind of the scheme as it was, this was like the format or the blueprint that he used with all the coaches, was that Singer would bring a kid to someone like Gordy. Gordy would then, talk to admissions and write up a profile or submit paperwork saying, this kid is amazing. And at that point now, Georgetown and other universities have put real checks and balances. So there's not this much trust in the coach. But at that point, whatever the coach said was it wasn't fact checked. So the students' athletic credentials, no one ever looked it up, or no one ever went online to see if they in fact won this national championship or if they were a ranked player. And so it was really, really almost ridiculously simple that he could then just say that this is who I want. Here's my list of kids, and this kid's on it. And then the parents would make a donation to Rick's quote unquote nonprofit. And Rick would then write a check to Gordy through the nonprofit. So it was all kind of through this sham called the Key Foundation. So it was all to help needy Cambodians.
And so the check would then come to, say, Gordy, and be $50,000 or something like that. And I don't know, how would he explain it on his taxes? Like,
Yeah, very good question.
That's what I couldn't figure out. I mean, one coach who in the end did not get sentenced. Was this the guy at Stanford of the sailing team?
John
Because he actually took the money and used it for his team.
Stanford got the money. Stanford got $700,000. Yeah.
Right. He didn't pocket it, but Gordy did. And he suddenly he bought a vacation house. He
upgraded the country club. I mean, you would know this better in DC, but he was at one of them, and someone told me,
I know. He was at Edgemoor, which is actually a very sweet club, old club, but it's tiny in Bethesda, which is just basically it's tennis courts. It's mostly a tennis club.
And no golf, right?
No golf. No. It's like right in urban Bethesda. So, but in a sort of nice residential neighborhood. But yeah, no. And then he went to the Chevy as they call it, and the Chevy Chase Club, and that is like
$100,000 just for just to join or something, or
right, and to eat bad food, But
he also, I mean, the other thing about coaches, and maybe this is how they get away with it with their taxes, is so he made I think $60,000 or something as the coach, but the coaches, supplement their income by running these camps. So every summer he would run a Nike camp at Georgetown. And I think that's where the real money is. So, I mean, 60 was not all he was living on. He's also married. And he was coaching the Obama kids, so he had a lot of, we don't have to feel too sorry for Gordy Ernst, but, I think there's a lot of money coming in from different places when you're one of these high profile coaches. So, I mean, that may have helped muddy the water.
Right. No, I don't feel sorry, but I'm fascinated by the good con man finds the vulnerability and seizes on it. And then, you either allow yourself to be exploited or not. But okay, so let's go. One of the things that you said was interesting. Let's go to now from the parents' side. So, okay, let's say, some of these parents were entitled assholes who just felt that their children needed, then if this was the way to do it, the money meant nothing. They'll just do it. And they were very aware of it. But that doesn't describe a lot of them, not even like Felicity Huffman, the more high profile, that he had, I think you made this point, especially with women and mothers, to exploit their maternal insecurities about their children and their own abilities and experience as mothers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was Felicity, and it was also very pronounced with Jane Buckingham, she ran a trend-setting company here in LA and is kind of a socialite around town. And I mean, both of them fit into the category of women who had always kind of struggled with mommy guilt and, had these big, busy careers, but they also had kids and they wanted to be great at everything, but they weren't always there for pickup and drop off. And they had a lot of guilt about it. In the case of Felicity, this is public, but both her daughters had been tested for learning disabilities. And Sophia, who's the one that was part of this scam in particular, and so Felicity's talked about this and written about this, but, it was really difficult childhood. And, Felicity was just always worrying about her and can she keep up in school and can she, emotionally, there's just all kinds of issues. And from the beginning, Felicity was kind of seeking out experts and, trying to meet people to help her with this. She then, of course, started this website called What the Flicka that sort of made fun of feeling like you were never a good enough mother. And then Rick would kind of swoop in, and I mean, I think he knew that, he sensed that, and he sensed that these women were looking for advice and looking for help and looking for someone to almost make things right. Like, I feel like the calculus in their heads was, I haven't been the best mother. I didn't do X, I didn't do Y, but when it comes to college, I am going to really bring it home for this kid. Like, this is what she wants. We're going to get it for her. And that was also the case with Jane Buckingham. So yeah, he was very, very astute like that, just psychologically.
Well, you put it really well. You said what seduced these mothers was that he was a caretaker of the highest order, someone to whom they could offload some of the burden they were so tired of carrying when it came to their child. Unlike everyone else making demands of them, he allowed them to breathe. So, I mean, as you point out, he was also something of a concierge. He would come in and at the beginning, just assure you. And you could, I mean, I can see it because, you know, as a busy mother, and you're so worried, and you don't understand this whole world of, like, you can't help with the tests. You know, you don't know calculus anymore. So you have this idea that this guy's going to be, okay, that's one big thing off my to-do list. And as you also point out, that you had a phrase for them, the artisanal parents. I mean, these are mothers that have been in this hothouse academic world since nursery school. I mean, they've been panicking about what nursery school their children were going to go into. And in a world where mothers judge you by your stroller, whether you give your kid organic food or how long did you nurse. So I think, as you said, that feeling of judgment as well. And if they fail at getting their kid into the college that their kid wants to go to, it's not just about status. It's they've failed as mothers and they've disappointed their children. Like, that was the other thing they couldn't stand, you know, little Johnny's disappointment.
Yeah. And I just thought this now that you said that, but I think also just that he was a man, that they felt less, you know, we do, and I'm a mother, you know, we feel more judgment from other women. Yeah. So because he was a man, there was less of that. And I think, you know, talk about concierge service. I mean, he is a workaholic. He wakes up at 4. He is on the phone. He's, you know, the Netflix documentary talks, you know, interviews a woman who sort of had a relationship with, but it wasn't possible because he's too busy. So he's the guy who you can text him any day or night. You can email him. He will pick up the phone. He is there for you, full service. And I think, yeah, to these mothers in particular, to have someone like that, you know, they're clearly taking care of things. They are, you know, this is not some slacker. Like, he's got this. And no question is too small, no concern. You know, I mean, he would advise kids, you know, when you go take the SAT, bring a sweater, it's going to be cold, you know, every detail, this guy has got it covered. And I think that was such, as you say, just such a relief for a lot of these moms who, you know, they're tired of being the ones having to think of all those details.
Right. And then in that brilliantly manipulative way. So at first he's just, I'm going to get your kid into Harvard. And then once he's got you fully in his pocket, once you really now trust him, you've handed over everything to him. He then starts to play you and starts to make you insecure. Your kid is never going to get in to Stanford or USC. He's not doing the work. You know, they start to prey on the mother's fears or parental fears.
Yeah.
And that's where he starts making the push to have them pony up money and lie to admissions. Is that right? That's
yeah. No, he does. You're right. He grooms them. It's grooming. It's you know, it's the charm offensive. It's, you know, get them to trust you, get them to rely on you, so that they've, you know, it's like a codependency almost that he creates with these parents. And then right at that moment, and he comes down hard. He says, she's not getting in, she's not getting into school X. She's not getting in anywhere. I mean, he just paints the most dire picture that just causes this panic and terror in people like Felicity and Jane. And they don't know what to do. And so even someone like Felicity, who, you know, for a few weeks, sort of, you know, once he lays out what he wants to do, she kind of goes back and forth, and, you know, she folds at the end. And yeah, no, he has, you know, it's funny to read about because it's so ridiculous. Like, I know, but when you're not, you know, when you're looking at it from the outside, you know, anyone who would say that would say your kid can't get anywhere. It's just a crazy statement. But, you know, it speaks to the power he has, he earns basically, and he has over these parents. And yeah, it just, he's a master manipulator for sure.
Right. And then, and the kids are in the pocket too. And then, but they are, as you say, they are, there comes that point where he's saying, like, it's pretty clear what he is asking you to do is illegal. But at that point, what is the parent thinking? Are they so worn down? Why did these parents, who are otherwise all powerful in their professional lives, why did they go along with this?
I think at that point, they are so far down the road, that's like they can almost see it. So now they have to have it. And the other thing that he does very brilliantly, or did very brilliantly, is that he veils everything in this language that parents are very familiar with. And it's, you're going to make a donation to the school. It's all kind of wink, wink. It's not until he gets nailed by the feds and he has to call the parents and get them to spell it out so that they can be indicted, that he ever uses the word bribery or bribe. He never uses the word bribe throughout when he's actually working with these parents. And I think that it's what I said. It's sort of this wink, wink situation where parents know what's going on, but they allow themselves to just fall into this, sort of fantasy world where, it's a donation I'm making to USC, and they kind of go along with it on that level, even though if you press them, of course they know what's going on. But I think it's just that level of deception and self-deception that he worked, and by using words like giving and donation, and he was a very good salesman too. And we're not getting you into the school. I'm going to help you. We're going to talk to the coach. I mean, he almost had this kind of casual way of describing it. Like, we're just going to talk to the coach, and, we're going to support the program. I mean, it just wasn't laid out in a very
right.
black.
I think some of them genuinely thought, even when they're being hauled up to court, that they had given donations. And of course, as you point out, they'd given donations all their lives to the schools. They're here. I'm being asked for 50, 100, 250,000 more. Sure. If it'll help little Jane or Johnny. But others were more, I don't know what I would say if I came down and saw my daughter, who never did crew, posing for a crew photo, which Olivia and Bella, they were the Huffman daughters, right? Laughlin. Sorry, they were the Lori Laughlin daughters.
A lot of characters, yeah.
Yeah, that should have raised some suspicions.
Yeah, I think everyone knew what was going on, but to tell a better narrative to talk out with their lawyers. But yeah, some of the parents, it just was so blatant. Yeah, the two of them posing on the ergometer. And then the worst was Devin Sloan asking his kid to get into the backyard pool and buying water polo equipment on Amazon. The kid had never played water polo in his life. And, anyway, you got to get down lower and let's take a picture. What's going on, Dad? So, that's the thing. It's so much of this is just really comical almost that, and then they were making the fake athletic profiles where they'd Photoshop another kid's face on, or the kid in question's face on another kid's body. It was just like, really? This is anyway.
Well, tell us then how it all came to an end. That was such a good story. Because this could have gone on indefinitely.
Yeah, it's amazing because it did go on, basically since 2011, and 50 people were charged. This was a sprawling case. And in a way, it's kind of shocking that he wasn't caught sooner and that someone didn't talk. There were so many parents involved here. But no, so it was very ironic the way it all came to an end, which was that an LA parent, Maury Tobin, was being investigated for something totally different, for an SEC fraud case. And basically the feds came, searched his house, grabbed him, sat him down, and he's looking at however many years for this white collar crime. And he basically says, hey, I got something else for you if you're interested. And at that point, he had been talking to the Yale soccer coach, Rudy Meredith, about paying Rudy to get his daughter into Yale. So they then grab Rudy.
And Tobin knew exactly what he was doing. There was no.
Oh yeah, he was getting out. It was
totally straightforward.
Yes, yeah. Like, let me shave down my time in this scenario. So they grab Rudy Meredith, and one of the first things out of Rudy's mouth is, "Let me tell you about Rick Singer." So and then it's almost like a sting operation where Rudy, now they're tapping Rudy's phone. So you're hearing all of this dialogue, all these conversations, and Rudy's kind of luring him in, getting Rick to talk about what's going on. And then Rudy sets up a meeting with Rick at a hotel in Boston, and Rick flies out, and basically the feds open the door. So yeah, it's very cinematic, you have to admit.
Well, also cinematic. I mean, because then they get Rick to cooperate. But come on, what was this about? Swarming like Brentwood at Bel Air at 6 a.m. and going into these people's houses with guns drawn like they were drug lords. That's how these parents were arrested.
Yeah, no, the prosecution was very, they were very excited about this case. I mean, they've called, in the first press release, it was like the biggest, college admissions crime in the history of whatever. And, they called a press conference, and the DA is there with like his shaved head. I mean, it was just like, they turned it into a media, not that the media wouldn't have been interested in this, but I mean, they knew what they had on their hands, and they knew the public outrage was going to be incredible. They knew what this story stood for. We're going to nail the rich who keep getting, what they want by paying for it. And so everything about this scandal was a spectacle from the very first second. And yes, they had this, definitely cinematic. They, deployed the FBI it was almost like all at the same time at like 6 a.m.
Right.
Same morning, and they're pounding on the doors. And, these wealthy families are coming out in their pajamas. I mean, some of it's kind of awful. Like the kids who had no idea are, this later came out in court filings, like some of the kids then suffered like PTSD, or they're afraid.
I think Olivia and Bella woke up with FBI men pointing guns in their faces. Like,
it was
shocking.
Yeah. And
like
then
it was Caracas or something.
They didn't tell the parents what was going on.
Right.
So they don't even know until they're hauled away and brought to the courthouse what this is for. I mean, I guess some of them could have put it together, but I don't know what else is going on in their life. But, it was all just very, very over the top.
And Rick had been ratting them out. Did he get some sort of plea for this? Is this going to help him? He has not yet been tried, correct? He's
right. So he'll be the last one. So basically they have to get through all the sentencing hearings, and there's a trial scheduled. Everything was pushed back because of COVID. I mean, there was supposed to be a trial. There's some parents fighting the charges, unbelievably, but that was scheduled for last September. It got pushed. Now it's scheduled for the fall. But they basically need to get through every parent and every coach, and then they will, bring him in. So he's paddleboarding now. He's working out at the gym.
Right. He's not being held in prison.
No, he's out there.
Whereas, and I think, the most poignant thing of this, and, a lot of people just say, boo-hoo, these people are rich. These kids are rich. They live totally entitled lives. But they really screwed their kids over in the end. The kids got it. What I had enormous sympathy for Olivia Jade, who had no interest in going to college. She had built a successful, brand as an influencer. Speaking of branding, she's making like $2 million a year or something. And she was just mortified that her mother had done this to her.
Yeah, she lost her business. She had all these brand deals with like Sephora. They all pulled out. And just the shame. She had a big YouTube and Instagram, all of these social media. I mean, she was a very dedicated vlogger, She did it every day. She treated it like a business, and she shut it down for a long time. I think she's back up now, and she's come out and talked a little bit about it. But and I think someone like Olivia Jade, she'll come back. But some of these kids, I remember talking to a parent telling me that the kid, and this was off the records, I won't say who, but the student was in college when this broke, had no idea that he was involved, and the scandal's breaking. And you can imagine on college campuses, particularly at the colleges that are involved, all the kids just like, oh my God, and making jokes. And, and here this poor kid is, his name's not out there yet, but he's around all his friends just mocking this, to the end of time. And he just has to sit there. And then eventually, of course, the name does come out and now everybody knows. So yeah, I think just the shame, I think the real victims of this are the kids and, just what it did to their reputation. But I think people are sympathetic and realize it really is the parents. So.
And will these parents ever come back? I mean, I guess Lori Loughlin's husband, I can never pronounce his last name, but he's got the big fashion brand.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. He seemed also like one of the biggest jerks in this whole story.
Yeah. Well, they fought the charges at first for a long time. And the more they fought, the more documents kept coming out. So and then ultimately they did plead guilty, but had they just pled guilty the way Felicity did, who handled it, I think, the best.
Yeah.
Because then you get some public sympathy and you just get this over with. But they fought, and their lawyers were going crazy, and which just led the prosecution to dump more and more evidence. And one of the things that came out was this meeting at Olivia Jade's private school between Massimo and the college counselor.
Massimo, right.
Yeah, and the counselor was so smart. He took notes on the meeting. And so all of that suddenly was in the public record, and just made them look horrible. So by the time they pled guilty, it was just, they'd kind of ruined it. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. But Felicity has her own ABC show now.
Oh, she does. About what? Coaching? Her college coaching?
Love America.
There are many second and third and fourth acts.
I'm probably not cast as a mother. I don't even know, but I know she's the star and she's back, and life goes on. So
they're recovering. Well, anyway, it's such a good book. It's obviously a gripping story. The book again is Guilty Admissions: The Bribes, Favors, and Phonies Behind the College Admissions Scandals. Nicole, thank you so much for joining the program. We just adored having you.
Thank you so much. It was so fun to chat about this.
Let's face it, cooking at home day after day and trying to eat healthily is difficult at the best of times. But during a pandemic, getting everything you need to make meals is complicated right now. But with Freshly, it's simple. Freshly offers chef-made, nutrient-packed, delicious meals delivered fresh to your door. No cooking is required. Your meals arrive prepared and fresh every week, so you can keep your fridge stocked and skip the trip to the store. Ordering is easy. Visit freshly.com and choose from over 30 delicious, satisfying, better-for-you meals like steak peppercorn or sausage baked penne or their chicken pesto bowl. And Freshly can fit your lifestyle with a variety of plans and meals to pick from that work for your dietary needs, preferences, tastes, and family size. I've been dieting this past month, and I can tell you that not having to think about what I'm going to eat and opening my fridge and there's a meal and knowing it's healthy is fantastic. And now you can try Freshly for just $6.16 per meal. So stop searching the internet for quote unquote healthy foods near me every night and start living life freshly. Your meals are always delivered fresh, never frozen, and are ready to heat and enjoy in just 3 minutes. With new meals added each week, Freshly brings the convenience of chef-made, nutritionist-designed classics right to your kitchen. So right now, Freshly is offering our listeners $40 off your first 2 orders when you go to freshly.com/femsplain. Make eating better your New Year's resolution and get a special limited offer. Go to freshly.com/femsplain for $40 off your first 2 orders. So try Freshly now, and for a limited time, yes, get $40 off your first 2 orders. Go to freshly.com/femsplain to learn more and to start eating better. Well, thank you all for listening. I look forward to seeing you again next week. And remember, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/femsplainers. We really live on your donations, and there are lots of benefits. We have secret podcasts every month. We have cocktail parties. We have a newsletter. So just please consider it. Whatever you can afford. It's not a private school here. Patreon.com/femsplainers. See you next time. The Femsplainers is a weekly podcast carried on the Ricochet Network and available pretty much on every podcast platform. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and watch video of our interviews on YouTube. You'll find links to everything, plus how to contact us directly at femsplainers.com. We survive and depend on your support. Like the show? Consider donating as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/femsplainers. And get our exclusive monthly bonus episode, Last Call, in which you get to join the conversation with our guests. And there's much more. And a big shout out of thanks to our audio and video editor, Nat Frum.